For 10 long years, the Millionaire CEO sat in silence, his face stone, his heart locked. Not once did he smile, not once did he laugh. Employees feared him, boardrooms bowed to him, and even his family spoke in whispers. But then one day a new secretary entered his office, and within moments, something happened. No one thought possible. He laughed. In the towering glass building of Langston Industries, silence had become law, the kind of silence not born from peace, but from fear. Every employee knew it. Every corner carried it. It was the silence of a man who had not smiled in 10 years. Daniel Langston, the CEO, had built an empire with steel in his voice and stone in his eyes. His wealth was unmatched, his reputation legendary, but behind the polished suits and marble walls, he lived like a man carved from ice. His face never softened, his lips never curved upward, and his laughter, if it ever existed, was a ghost no one could recall. Meetings were tense, assistants trembled. Even shareholders lowered their gaze when he entered the room. To serve him was to serve silence. To work under him was to walk on glass. And though people respected his brilliance, they feared his presence. But fear, like silence, always leaves a wound. Daniel's wound was buried deep, unseen, unspoken, and untouchable. Once, long ago, he had known joy. A decade earlier, before tragedy struck, he was a husband and father. He carried warmth in his smile, laughter in his home. His daughter's voice had been his favorite song, her small hand the anchor that steadied his heart. Until the day he lost her. A sudden illness, swift and merciless, tore her from the world. His wife withdrew into sorrow, and their love fractured under the weight of grief. Daniel was left alone, shattered but refusing to break. So he built walls, walls of steel, wealth, and silence. Smiles became strangers, laughter became betrayal. To smile felt like forgetting, to laugh felt like dishonor. For 10 years, he chose silence over healing. Then came Anna. She was hired as a secretary not for prestige but out of necessity. The company's last assistant had left in tears, unable to endure Daniel's unrelenting coldness. Anna was different, though. She was steady, quiet, and carried herself with the calm of someone who had faced storms far greater than office tempers. She was a veteran, though she never spoke of it openly. Her eyes carried the weight of deserts, her hands the memory of bandages and loss. Where others flinched, Anna remained still. Where others feared silence, she honored it. Her first day, she entered his office, set down the files, and waited. Daniel glanced at her briefly, expecting the same nervous shifting he always saw. But she stood tall, shoulders squared, her presence neither defiant nor afraid, just steady. Days turned to weeks, and Daniel began to notice small things. The way she placed his coffee, always exactly how he liked it, though he never told her. The way she wrote notes with precision, but added reminders that seemed more human than corporate. Donned to skip lunch. Your son called twice. Remember water, not only coffee. She spoke little, yet her silence was different from his. His silence was ice, hers was warmth. It was the silence of someone who understood pain, but did not let it define her. One evening, as shadows stretched across the city skyline outside his office, Daniel sat at his desk, a rare pause between endless meetings. His head ached, his heart heavier than usual. Anna entered quietly, placing a folder before him. Inside was a simple schedule, but on the corner of the page, she had drawn something, an absent-minded sketch of a small bird perched on a branch. Daniel frowned at first, but then, against his will, something stirred. The bird was crooked, the branch uneven, but there was life in it. He stared at it for a long moment. Anna noticed his gaze, and for the first time allowed herself a smile. "It's a terrible drawing," she said softly. Daniel looked up. The words were unexpected, They were simple, almost foolish. But something cracked inside him. His lips twitched, his chest tightened, and before he could stop himself, a sound escaped. It was rough, unfamiliar, and startling. He laughed. Not loudly, not freely, but enough to break 10 years of silence. The air in the office shifted. It was as if the walls themselves sighed with relief. Anna's smile widened just slightly, but she said nothing more. She didn't gloat. She didn't point it out. She simply returned to her desk, leaving him with the sound of his own laughter echoing in his ears. That night, Daniel sat alone, staring out at the glittering city. He thought of his daughter's laughter, of how it used to fill their home like sunlight. For the first time in years, the memory didn't crush him. It comforted him. The days that followed carried change. Small at first. He greeted employees with nods instead of silence. He listened, rather than dismissing. And every so often, the corners of his mouth betrayed him, pulling upward when Anna's presence reminded him that silence did not always mean sorrow. One afternoon, during a board meeting, a heated argument erupted between two executives. Voices clashed. Pride battled pride. Daniel watched, his expression unreadable. Then, almost unconsciously, he spoke words that silenced the room. Strength isn't in silence. Strength is in choosing when to break it. The board stared. They had never heard him speak like that. Some thought it a slip. Others thought it wisdom. But Anna, watching from the corner, knew it was truth. Over time, the legend of the unshakable, joyless CEO began to crumble. Employees whispered that he smiled now, that he laughed, that something or someone had thawed the ice. Yet Daniel knew the truth. It wasn't about a secretary or a sketch of a bird. It was about finally allowing himself to remember that grief does not dishonor love. Silence does not protect memory. And laughter does not erase pain. It honors the joy that once was. The day he laughed was the day he remembered his daughter not with sorrow, but with love. And so the man who had not smiled in 10 years smiled again. Not because of wealth, not because of success, but because a woman who had known her own battles reminded him of one simple truth. Healing is not forgetting. Healing is remembering without breaking. From that day forward, Daniel was still the CEO, still powerful, still commanding. But in the quiet moments when laughter slipped through, he was something more. He was human again. Even the coldest silences hide untold pain. Sometimes it takes just one small act of kindness to thaw years of sorrow. A sketch, a word, a smile. It may seem small, but it can save a soul. What do you think was the most powerful moment in this story? Share where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. Subscribe for more cinematic stories of silent strength, healing, and humanity.